Once again, the class is being recorded. If anyone has questions or comments and would like us to turn off the recording, please let us know. And today we're holding in middle of chapter 1 of Tanya, and before we begin with the text of the Tanya, I'm going to introduce two general concepts that today's class is based on, and we'll discuss it a little bit, and then we'll go to the text and to the class of today. Number one is the world. The way God has created the world is that everything that exists in the world is made up of four elements. Everything. There isn't anything in the world that does not have four elements. This is an ancient concept in the Torah, in Medrash, in Kabbalah, that speaks about the four elements. Known as Arba Yesodot, four foundations. So let me introduce the concept. Let's take, for example, a piece of paper.
Dasha, I want it back.
Okay, thank you very much, Jerry.
Let's take, for example, a piece of paper or a piece of wood. It's the famous example brought in Hasidic philosophy. Occupies so much space and weighs so much. When we burn it, suddenly all this that occupies all the tangible piece of this paper, of the piece of wood, becomes ashes and very little. What happened? Also, after a fire, once a piece of wood is burnt in fire, or any fire, a piece of paper, there is some moisture that is being left there. Any fire. And it comes with a warning: before you start a fire in your house to try it out, make sure you consult the appropriate authorities. Where you could start a fire, where you cannot, and so on. So what is explained is the following: the piece of wood is so big, occupies so much space and so on, because it has in it four elements. It has in it the tangible, what is referred to as Yesod He'afar, the foundation, the element of dust, of earth, of the actual tangible product. That's there. There is air that is there, and like bread, let's think of the concept of matzah versus bread versus challah, where in the matzah we flatten it to have the minimum air possible there. Could be the same amount of flour, same amount of water. But bread rises, it has air in it. Matzah also has air in it. It's impossible it shouldn't have air, oxygen, whatever you want to call it. But it's very contracted there and concentrated. Then there is the water, the element of moisture that is there. And then there is the element of fire that is there as well. those four elements, science also speaks about it, but we're not learning today science. For that, there is a University of Calgary and a MRU, and that's not what I specialize in. But that's what Torah speaks about, these four elements. What happens when that's how the piece of paper could get caught on fire, and fire actually it could burn, is because it has the element of fire in it. So what happens when it burns is the four elements are separating. Each one is going their way. What the element of water, moisture, separates, and that's the moisture that is left there when there is a fire. The air that is in the piece of paper or in the piece of wood disappears, goes back to its source. The element of fire goes back to its source. What is left is the most tangible of the four, which is what is called the Yesod Afar, the dust, the earth, the actual product. That's what is left, and that's what we touch, and that becomes very little. From a big piece of wood, there is very, very little actual ashes that are left. So those are the four elements. Any questions or any comments so far? No? Okay. So that's anything. Anything has the four elements. Our body also has those four elements.
I have a question.
Yes.
So something with more of the element of fire is more likely to burn than something with less. So, for example, oil must have a higher element of fire, and that's why it burns. Is that right?
Most probably.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yes. Water cannot burn, but water does add fire. Water also has fire in it. Everything is there is nothing in the world that doesn't have the four. Some are more, as Jerry just mentioned, more made of one element over another. It's like paint, like anything that is mixed. Depends how much of each thing is there, and that's how it is. And this, yes.
You just mentioned that water has fire. Does it mean that each of those elements contain three others?
Yes.
So each of them also contains the other?
Yes. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to amalgamate and to mix together. So they must. The question was asked if each one of the three contains the other. The answer is yes. In its source, not necessarily. I don't know, but for sure, the way it is in creation, for sure, that's what it is. Shamayim. Right at the beginning of Genesis, right at the beginning of Chumash Bereshit, God created heavens. Rashi comments, what is Shamayim? Heavens made of ash and mayim, made of fire and water, a mixture together. Everything is mixed together. This is true in the tangible physical world, as well as in the spiritual world as well. And also things that are in this world that are not as tangible also have these four elements. Meaning, where is this heading? The soul. The neshama also is a creation. The soul is a creation by God. As we say every morning in prayers, Ata verata, Ata yitzata, you have created it, you have formed it, you have put the soul into me. The soul also has these four elements. Obviously, the four elements not in a tangible way, because, for example, we can't burn a soul. We could burn a body, God forbid. But the soul cannot be burnt physically. But the soul has in it the four elements on a more less tangible and a more spiritual way. Not as tangible as it is today. By the way, I don't want to get into it now in length, but there is angels, the difference between human beings and angels, according to the scriptures. A human being is made out of the 4 elements, while an angel is made only out of 2, lacking 2. Which are the 2? It's based on a verse in Tehillim by King David. Which are the 2? Esh and Ruach. Fire and air. Wind, air, whatever you want to call it. So angels are made of Esh and Ruach, lacking the other 2. And we could elaborate on it, and we could learn a lot only on this subject of the 4 elements. But for the purpose of the class today, it's important to remember, as I mentioned, everything has those 4 elements, including the souls. And neshama has the 4 elements as well. Yes.
But the neshama is so it must be on a ruchnius, on a spiritual level, because the neshama is has no mass, no, it doesn't, so it has to be on a higher level.
So exactly. So as I mentioned, it's not something that is tangible, because the neshama is not tangible, but the neshama is in this world. A soul is created by God in this world. So it's something that we don't know how to touch, we don't see. It's not something that is tangible, but it has those 4 elements also in a non-tangible way. And we're going to learn today what they are. Okay?
So in the higher worlds,
Yep.
These 4 elements exist, but in a non-tangible way. Is that
Yes.
right? And the more it comes down into
Yes.
close to this world, it becomes
Yes.
more tangible.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? Should we go on? We'll come back to it. The next topic that I wanted to introduce today to today's class is God has created in the world an opposition to himself. In other words, God himself is holy, godly, right? And he created a world where he should be visible to a certain extent. He should reveal himself. In the words of the Medrash, connected to the 10th of Shvat this coming week, where God wanted to have a dwelling in this world. That's godliness, holiness. God came down at Mount Sinai. God asked to build him a home. Every home is a home to God. That's godliness. But God didn't want it to be so simple. So he created opposition. He created what is called evil, what is called ungodly, not godly. In the not godly side that God has created, in order to challenge us, to challenge godliness being revealed in this world, there is what Kabbalah speaks about, and we find it a lot in Hasidic teachings, 3 definitions of the ungodly side. One is called klipa, and by the way, I'm on the second line of the handouts, not the chart, but the handout, was our little intro to today. One is called klipa. Klipa means a shell, One is called klipat noga, the clear shell, and one is called sitra achara. It's an Aramaic, two Aramaic words, which translate in Hebrew as tzad acher, the other side. Those are three definitions that we find commonly in Hasidic teachings. What are those three words? What are those three definitions? So, again, it's not so much crucial to today's class, to the end of chapter 1, but I'll introduce these concepts. Klipa means a shell. What is a shell? What is a shell? A covering. What is the purpose of a shell? Protection. What happens as a result of a shell?
It's hard to get to someone what's inside.
Hard to get to what's inside, and we don't see what's inside.
Also protection.
Yeah, we said protection. And what?
It's nurturing.
Yes. What happens with the shell? We break it. What do we do with the shell?
Depending on the shell, some could be used, some should be discarded.
Right. So some of the shells are being discarded, and some shells are being used. Okay. Could be used. Okay. So the exact same thing. That's what God has created in this world. In other words, the word world in Hebrew is olam. What does olam mean in Hebrew? World, right? What is olam? What is the word olam? Where is the root of the word olam? Elem, he'elem, leha'alim, with the ayin, to hide, to conceal. So God has created a world that is a shell, that is concealing something, that is hiding something, that is protecting something. What is it that it's protecting? What's inside? What is inside? God. Hashem. But He created a world that is the shell on God Himself, on the fruit, on what's inside. That's what He has created. What do we do with this world, with this shell? There are two kinds of shells. Some of the shells we need to discard, we need to get rid of, we can't do anything with them. Some of the shells are what is called klipat noga, a clear shell. A famous example brought on it in Hasidut is that is a egg. There is the egg inside, there is the eggshell, and inside the eggshell there is, what is it called?
Membrane.
The membrane. That membrane is klipat noga.
Membrane.
It's a clear what?
Membrane.
Membrane. Okay. That membrane is that clear shell. What is with that? The shell on the outside is not clear. Very hard to see through. Impossible to see through, unless you have a special light that could see through that eggshell. But for the ordinary eye, it's covering what's inside. But that membrane,
Membrane. A-N-E.
Brain like
A&E, membrane, that clear shell, I'll stick to the clear shell. That clear shell, klipat noga, is clear. You could see through it. What happens to that clear shell? either it ends up with a shell, with the outside shell that goes to garbage, that we cannot eat, or it joins the fruit and we could eat it. And the same is with other fruits as well. But there is a reason why we bring the example from the egg with a clear shell and so on. But that's not for now. In other words, what are these two kinds of shells that we are referring to? There are things in the Torah in the world that the Torah is telling us you are not allowed to have anything to do with it. Treif. Not kosher food, not kosher to use, not words that are totally not kosher, actions that are totally not kosher. Those are the shells that cannot be recycled. Generally speaking. Those are parts that are asur, that are prohibited. It's a shell that is not authorized to. All we need to do is break it apart, get rid of it. Then there is the clear shell. Those are things that are mutar, that are permissible. It's still part of the shell that is covering and hiding the inside, the godly intent, the godliness that is there. But if you open it up, if you use it right, you could and you should transform that shell into an edible fruit, into godliness versus throwing it out. That's the klipat noga. If I would ask you a question, the vast majority of objects in the world, of creation, do they belong to the shell, to the klipa, or to the klipat noga, to the clear shell?
50-50 chance. Klipa.
Klipat noga.
Klipa.
Klipat noga. Vast majority of objects in the world is klipat noga. Vast majority of our time that God is giving us is the clear shell. It's part of that shell, but it's whatever we're going to do with it. If we're going to use that minute, that second, that hour for a godly purpose, then it turns into kedusha, into holiness. If we're not going to use it appropriately, then we're throwing it out. We're wasting it. The same is everything: clothing, business, eating, sleeping, taking walks, going on vacation. 99% of what we do in this world could be used either in the right way or in the godly side, or in the evil side. That's up to us. However, there is a good portion of things in this world and of time given to us on and on and on and on that is totally a klipa, the shell that we're not allowed to benefit from. We're not allowed to have anything to do with it. Yes.
So klipat noga is, all edible plants, kosher animals, but like just in terms of objects, wouldn't there be more non-kosher, certainly non-kosher animals, insects, the whole animal kingdom is more non-kosher than kosher. In terms of plants, there's probably more non-edible plants than plants. So wouldn't it be more klipa?
Very good point. You're asking a very good question, but yes, there are more non-edible plants and more non-edible objects in the world than edible objects. But we're not talking now only about food. about food taking in. We're talking about using it for the right for the right thing, for godliness or not godliness. So so the trees, a beautiful garden. It's not edible. The question is, what am I using the garden for? Am I using the garden for basi legani leginuni? I come to my garden to turn it into a garden of God, or am I using the garden to perform sins in the garden, which is God forbid. So the garden, what would be a sin?
Yeah, using the garden, what would be an example of a sin?
An example of a sin in the garden is to go out and smoke there. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring up an issue about smoking. What's speaking lashon hara in the garden, using the garden to take a good walk with someone and talking evil about someone else, talking behind someone's back in the garden is an example of using the garden to do something bad. Sitting in the garden with a glass of tea and thinking about how am I going to hurt my wife, how am I going to hurt my husband, how am I going to hurt my children, how am I going to hurt my parents. Those are examples, and we shouldn't know of any more examples because it's more than enough. But I mean, using the garden for anything, basically it's anything that God is giving me. Am I using it? God is giving me the next minute. Am I going to use the next minute for something positive, or am I for something godly, or am I going to use the next minute for something negative, or something ungodly? So it's not only about eating. It's not only about food. It's anything. Using a building, using using my car, using my phone. A phone is a clear shell. It has a lot of negative things there. It's a very dangerous tool.
Not your phone.
Any phone is very dangerous. Any phone is very dangerous. It's a tool that either we're going to use for to turn the phone into a godly phone, or we're going to use the phone to harm ourselves physically, spiritually, our families, and so on and so forth. So are phones in the world treif? No, they're not treif. When televisions came out, concept of televisions came out in this world. The Hasidic world was very much against it, obviously. And until today, we don't have a TV at home. We don't have television at home. We don't have cable at home. And we shouldn't. The worst nightmare in a person's life to have a television at home. At the same time, the same Rebbe appeared on cable and had Farbrengens on TV before the Hasidic world was even dreaming about it, to the extent that the Rebbe was attacked by other Hasidim. How could a Hasidic Rebbe be on television? And the explanation is television, nothing wrong with it. World Wide Web, the World Wide Web, the big world that has been discovered in our generation today is not evil. It's an amazing tool. But it's very dangerous as well. Depends how we're using it. Depends how it's being used. But it's not evil. It's not the shell that is treif. Might be a shell that is treif for me to have. Might be for some people it's okay, for other people it's not okay. But the I was in Israel and visited with Rabbi Faber, Danny Faber, those of you who remember him, and in his family. I didn't realize at the time. Then he explained to me, and he told me that in the circle where he lives, in Bet Shemesh, in that area, no one walks around with smartphones. It's not kosher. Yeah. It's not a thing to do. I was sitting in his house with his children, and my phone is there. I didn't even realize. I didn't even think. He told me later, he gave me directions where to go about. He tells me, you're going to go through a certain neighborhood there, you shouldn't take it out. Gave me a warning, there you shouldn't take it out. So I told him, wow. And he tells me, he explained to his children that he's a Chabad rabbi and he needs it to serve God. He needs it for the work of bringing godliness to people. So not only is he allowed to have that phone, but it's a mitzvah. But for us, we don't need it, the way he explained to his children. So I appreciate that. My kids don't have it in yeshiva. They shouldn't have that. A 5-year-old child should not have a smartphone. It's a dangerous tool. Neither should a 15-year-old. Exactly. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Except for Rabbi Matusof to give Shmuel a class, which he does.
There are regular phones, and we could use mothers' phones for that, not fathers.
As long as they know how to use it right.
Yes, sorry.
When cell phones were invented though in Israel, it was a way of communication so that if there was danger somewhere, children could let their parents
But they do sell kosher phones. They do sell kosher phones. Not smartphones, but they do have kosher phones.
Do they put in the mikveh first?
No. But they do sell kosher phones and they do have filters. They do have filters on it and so on. And I know even couples who in order for one to use internet in the house, they need the spouse to open up for them. They have codes that they need each one of them to have because they need to control themselves. And it's not to be taken lightly and to make fun of the religious ultra-Orthodox Hasidic people. Meanwhile, we do know how many marriages were broken apart and families were thrown to garbage because of this amazing smart tool. So that's the point. But at the same time, it's not evil. It's still klipat noga. It's a klipa. It's a shell. And we need to realize that it's a shell. Going to work is a shell. Going on vacation is a shell. All these things are shells. It's part of the world that is hiding, concealing godliness. What we need to do is find the godliness there, search for the godliness there, and bring it out and use as much as possible. Use it and turn it into godliness versus throwing it out. Certain parts were not allowed, and there is no way to justify Lashon Hara. There is no way to justify chazer and non-kosher food and other things that are not allowed. There is no way. There is one will say, and if you come to me on Shabbos, I'll write you a check for $3 million and you'll be able to pay off the mortgage. There is no way we're allowed to do that. That's not klipat noga. That's not a shell that could be that could be turned into kedusha, into holiness. That's klipa. That's a shell that it's totally prohibited, forbidden. Yes.
Essentially, what you're saying is context. It's context. If I have a gun is a neutral item. It's a piece of metal. It's a mechanical device.
Right.
If I'm using it in the robbery, it's not a good
Yes.
thing. If I'm using it to defend my family, it's a good thing.
Yes.
The gun itself doesn't have a conscience.
but don't quote me now that I said that we're allowed to have guns in our homes. I'm not entering now the political issue of it.
Rabbi, it's context. You look
Yes.
at minerals.
100%.
How many different minerals and elements in the world and all that?
100%.
Depends what they're used for.
Yeah.
Now, the chazar is different. The chazar in and of itself, also you can say, what is it used for?
Right.
It's used for food. For us, it's not appropriate.
Right.
Context.
Yes. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, in a different discussion, Jewish discussion with the rabbi, the question was about intent and action, the difference between our purpose for doing things and what we actually do. So the discussion was about mitzvot. If one performs mitzvot, and the mitzvot are done from the heart, or they're just done out of rote, if you will, if there's a difference. And an example was given, and the example was that if, let's say, somebody comes to a rabbi and says, I'll give a donation of $100,000, and but I do it because it will make me famous. The rabbi at that point said, "Well, I don't care what your intent is. If you come and want to do a mitzvah, we'll accept the mitzvah. I'm not judging you. I'm not basically even considering why you're doing it. You're doing it good for you. The reason is between you and Hashem." A second ago, you just discussed the notion if somebody comes to you and gives you a gift, whatever, you would refuse it based on the fact that it is really coming at odds with another mitzvah. So, what exactly is the clear path there?
Very good question. If we could leave it for a little bit later, because it's a little bit out of the context, but it's a very good question. When yes and when not, let's leave it for a little bit later. We'll address it soon. So up until now we covered two definitions that Hasidus speaks about: klipa and klipat noga. Then there is another definition. The other definition is called sitra achara, which is Aramaic for Hebrew tzad acher, the other side. What is the other side?
From Kedusha.
Yes. So there is the side of Kedusha, of holiness, and then there is the other side. The reality is that between Sitra Achara and Klipat Nogad, I don't know if there is a difference. It's two expressions, but basically, generally speaking, they're the same. Sitra Achara brings out a point that is saying the following. It's the other side. Is it bad? No. Is it evil? Not at all. It's just not on this side. It's outside the house. It's the other side. The other side of the street. Is the other side bad? It's not bad. But it's the other side. It's not our side. Which brings out, this expression brings out that anything that is not Kedusha, that is not holy, doesn't belong. It's an extreme approach. The Alter Rebbe is going to speak about it more in chapter 6 of Tanya, which we're going to get to. But that's the general approach. In other words, it's not, I have my religious duties, I pay my respect to God, Shabbat, praying 3 times a day, learning 7 hours a day, 12 hours a day, Torah, doing mitzvahs, everything. But 1 hour, freedom. Give me 1 hour for myself. 1 day off. 1 hour free. I won't do anything wrong. I'll just rest my eyes and I'll just go to bed. Don't think about God. Don't think about anything. Just 1 hour. All I'm doing is resting. Resting from this big responsibility that I carry all the time. That 1 hour, I didn't do anything wrong, but it crossed to the other side. I walked away from me serving God. A soldier is a soldier 24/7. There cannot be a soldier that will say, well, 1 hour I'm not a soldier. You can't. If you're a soldier 24/7. There is a Hasidic expression, there is a difference the way a servant, a slave, sleeps or a free man sleeps. You could see the expression on the face while they're asleep. The slave that sleeps has on his or her face the whole time the expression, the Kabbalat Ol, the yoke of heaven, the responsibility that one carries. A parent can never sleep as in the same way that, as before the parent had a child. It's not possible. 1 hour I won't be a parent. You know, little kids, you're not my father, you're not my mother. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So that's a very extreme approach that the Alter Rebbe introduces, briefly in passing, right in the first chapter of Tanya, against saying there isn't such a thing. I'm not in my community, I don't have to daven with a minyan. As an example. But again, it's beyond that. I don't have any responsibilities. You cannot be not responsible. It's not a job of 9 to 5. A religious duty that we have. Anything that is not kedusha belongs to the sitra achara. Does that mean it's bad? No. So, enhancing the question that Avi asked, and again I'm not addressing it now. So if I want to do a favor to someone, but not because it's a mitzvah in the Torah, but it's a human act, humanity. It's the right thing to do. How can I not do a favor to someone? It's in my nature. If it's not godly, it's sitra achara, it's the other side. The other side equals klipa and equals evil. All part of that category. So in other words, doing a favor to someone, being charitable, never mind ego. Never mind to create a name to oneself. But just out of the goodness of one's heart, if it's not godly, it belongs to the evil side. It's not evil in our language. It's a good thing to do. And as that rabbi said to that person, give your $100,000. If you know that person, by the way, I'll call him right away.
That's what he said.
So but as far as where does it belong, if it's not godly, it's in the other side. It's an extreme approach, very extreme, but very important to realize in life as well. And as we'll learn further, we'll appreciate why. And yes, I don't know who raised the hand first, please.
This is really difficult for me.
For me too.
Can you put it in a way that a stupid person like me can understand it? You went with the example of the egg.
Yep.
Can you put that last section in the part of in the same analogy of the egg? Because I'm getting lost.
Yes.
Please.
So
You
very
have
good
to- you have to
question,
show
and I'll put
the
it
egg.
yes,
Then
and
you have the
I'll
membrane.
yes.
Then
Yes.
what about the inside of the egg? There's nothing here that talks about the inside of the
No,
egg.
no, because that's godliness. The inside of the egg is holy. The inside of
shouldn't
the
we
egg
have
is
a
like the
fourth-
fruit inside.
So
Here,
you don't need a fourth section, or is
that's
the
kedusha.
was
No,
understood?
kedusha is what is holy, versus klipa, or klipat noga, or sitra achara.
Okay, so the kedusha in the example of the egg is the inside of the egg. Fine.
Yes.
So what's the other side? Everything outside the egg. So if this is an egg, everything else is sidra achara.
No, when we're
No,
giving
I'm
the
serious, I'm
example
trying
of
to
the,
get it.
I understand, but when you give the example of the egg, then don't think about the whole world, think about the egg. So anything that is outside of the inside of the egg, of the white and the yellow of the egg itself, is sitra achara, is the other side.
So-
And-
okay, hang on. Now,
And the membrane, the clear shell, either will become part of the egg or will become part of the other side. So of the shell. So in other words, if anything in this world,
Yeah.
99% of things in this world, are part of the clear shell. What is the clear shell? Still a shell. It's the other side. Unless I take it and I turn it into godly. So I have an hour. I have an hour this afternoon. Okay? I have an hour. That hour is a shell. As of now, it's a shell.
However you deal with it, it tells you what's going on.
However I deal with it is it tells me what goes on exactly. In other words, it's a shell and it's on the other side. It's part of the world that is not godly. The next hour is not godly yet. It's part of the time that God has created, part of the world that is concealing godliness. Because the chances and the way the world works is where, and it says in the Zohar that Olam Hazeh, that's in chapter 6, is malek klipot, is filled with shells. The whole world is shells. It's not easy to take next hour and to do it right. But that's our job, to reveal the godliness in that hour and to turn that hour into a godly hour.
I got a crazy idea. Based on what you're saying, how it sounds to me, and maybe that's why you keep on stressing that it's very extreme. It sounds as if it's either Kedusha or it's absolutely not. There's no middle way. Are you saying something like that?
I'm saying something like that. Because, take this book. Take this book. Is this page inside the book or outside the book?
At the moment, it's inside.
It's inside. This page is inside the book or outside the book?
It's inside the book.
This corner here, this angle, is inside the book or outside the book?
It's outside the book.
Outside the book. There isn't such a thing as inside or outside. As both. It's either inside or outside. The question is what you're going to do with it. But so there, in what's outside of Kedusha, there is different levels. Some of the outside could go inside. Some of the outside cannot go inside. So in Alberta, in Canada in general, in Alberta, when you come in from outside, you tell people, you know what? You could come in from the outside and bring in with you a little bit of mud from the outside, but take off the shoes and leave them by the door. Don't bring the entire mud to inside the house. This doesn't belong. It's beautiful snow. It's beautiful when it's outside, but it belongs outside, doesn't belong inside. Certain things could be brought from outside to inside the house.
You can bring in the
Kids
cell
play
phone.
with their...
You can bring in the cell phone, but make sure you're using it for the right reason.
Exactly.
Kind of idea.
You could tell the kids certain toys belong outside, and that's perfect to play with it there. Certain things you could bring inside from the outside. Certain things you can't. That's exactly how we need to deal with everything in this world. Everything is external to godliness until we make a choice of bringing it in. Is it kosher or is it not kosher? Not food only. Not limited to consumption, to action. Can I say that word? I cannot say that word. It has to be calculated. Do I bring it in as part of my family or I don't bring it in as part of my family? But it can be half and half. Exactly.
Thank you.
Yes.
So you said klipa is neutral, but isn't it most of it on the negative side? In other words, the only thing that's neutral is klipa snoga. Everything else, klipa is negative.
Yes.
Okay. And so Sutra Achra is also the Yitzhahora, everything, right? So most of it is negative. It's not neutral.
True. But it depends. You see, it's negative in comparison that it is... it's playing with words, but
Okay.
but there is the negative that remains negative and that cannot be brought inside is less than the negative that is neutral, that the neutral belongs to the negative and could be brought inside.
So klipa snoga,
Klipas noga is,
neutral.
but it's negative until it's brought inside.
It's a combination of negative and kedusha.
It's negative. It's a neutral within the negative.
Okay.
Yes.
So you said about what hour, like I didn't do that hour for godliness. So it's Sidva Achra, but then at the same time it's evil because I cannot return that hour.
I didn't. Very good point. I did not speak about the hour of the past. I spoke about the next hour.
Oh,
So we should always look forward. So we should always look forward.
What?
Should we always look
So
forward?
no, that's number one. I spoke about the next hour coming, not about the past. About the past. So we're jumping to chapter 6 and 7 and so on in Tanya, but the Alter Rebbe says there is the following, that the past could also change. In other words, I had breakfast this morning. If once I had breakfast, before I eat in the morning, don't talk to me, because I'm not. I rested last night. I slept last night. I did my exercise. Now I'm all about. Now I'm ready to start my day. When I slept last night, I did not think about it being that it's for the purpose of a godly purpose. When I ate this morning, I didn't think about it that it's for a godly purpose. I just had a beautiful. My wife gave me breakfast, a breakfast sponsored by the Moise family.
Yeah.
You know, a beautiful brunch. I ate. I didn't think anything. Where does that eating belong? It's outside. Why? Because I didn't think about it for anything godly. If I made the bracha, then it's godly. Obviously, because I turned it into godliness. Because I said the bracha. I ate because I'm coming to a class, and learning Tanya, then it's godly. But I'm giving an example. If I ate something totally without thinking anything, hour later, what am I doing with that energy? With that turned part of my blood and flesh. If I do a mitzvah with it, then I took that hour of the past and from klipat noga, from the clear shell, and now I'm turning that into holiness. If I went out and murdered someone, God forbid, if I went out and murdered someone by speaking lashon hara against the person, God forbid, so I murdered that person spiritually, then I took that energy that I had and that exercising and that everything that I consumed, including the food that was there, that all instead of being elevated to godliness, and I dumped it the toilet. God forbid. And that's what we do with our life all the time, playing yo-yo with everything that God is giving us. Here it's holy, here it's not. Here it's holy, here it's not. But the point I'm bringing out from all this is that whenever we're going to learn in Tanya about evil and the other side, we must remove the conception in our mind that evil is bad. Not bad. It's wonderful. It's good. It might even be, we might even consider it holy. Look at this person. This person is a holy man, a holy lady. You know, they're doing all the time. They're doing acts of goodness and kindness.
You're not pointing at me. Somebody else probably.
When I said this lady, no, I didn't point at you. No, for sure not. So the person might be very really exceptional. In what we're learning here, with the Alter Rebbe is taking us at a different journey. Is it godly or is it not godly? And the same is, that's the introduction to what we're going to learn next week of the second part of chapter 1 about the two souls that we have, the godly soul and the animal soul. And in the animal soul, when we say the animal soul, it's not necessarily bad. There is also bad. There is also evil, what we call bad and evil. But there is the animal soul, whatever is not godly, is also part of the animal soul, and the four elements that are part of it, that are making up the animal soul and what derives from it. So that's the introduction to the next part, and all we did today is cover the first 2 lines, and I thought that it will take us 15-20 minutes and we'll cover the 2 pages. So I guess we didn't, and it's to be continued next week. Any questions, any comments, any so
Great
the
class.
answer, yes.
Great class.
It just as an example of taking the mundane and
Yeah,
turning
yeah,
it
yeah.
into something holy is Shabbat.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
In the sense that you're taking a meal, and you're always eating, but you're taking a meal and you're celebrating Shabbat. You're taking something that you're
Yes
doing
and no.
You're elevating it.
Yes
No?
and no. Shabbat is not free. It's the 6 days of the week to turn the food into holiness and to make a bracha and to do something with that food that is positive is more transforming the klipat, the clear shell. Shabbat is not a clear shell. But there, as I said, yes and no. There is taking the food, preparing food for Shabbos is a clear shell that is turning into a Shabbos mitzvah meal. Yes, yeah. In that regard, yes. Yes.
What if, so you're talking about Klipa and Klipa Noga, right?
Yeah.
So what if in this world everyone thinks that you're doing the wrong thing? Like, for example, you are like driving extremely fast.
Yeah.
Driving really fast, right? But what they don't know is, the people don't know is that you're driving very fast because you're late to davening and that you want to daven, you want to learn, right?
Try that with the police. Yes.
In Jerusalem,
Is
before
Yes.
Shabbos.
Is that in the shell? Does that count as going in the shell? Because technically you're doing the right thing, but no one thinks you are.
You're bringing an example that who says it's the right thing?
Yeah.
It's the right thing.
No,
You're
some things, you see, not every mitzvah haba'a be'avera, certain, if it's permissible to drive quick and very fast, and you're driving fast for a mitzvah, then it's a clear shell that is turning into kedusha, into holiness. But if driving fast is dangerous and it's against the law and it's against Torah, then it's a mitzvah haba'a be'avera. Then it's a mitzvah that comes with an avera, and we can't turn chazer into holy meat for Shabbos.
Okay, fine. So I'll give you a better example. It's like waving a chicken over your head. Everyone, if you're not Jewish, will think you're crazy. Waving a chicken over your head before you're kaparas, right?
Even Jewish poor animal lovers.
Yeah. But
Even
really,
Jewish animal
like
lovers.
really, you're
So
cares what
so
someone
turning a
else-
chicken for a mitzvah, turning a chicken to a mitzvah is taking the clear shell and turning it to a mitzvah. If it's prohibited, then no.
doing the right thing.
If it's doing the right thing, that's what I said.
Thinks that.
Who cares about what one
they
thinks? No one thinks that what we're learning today makes any
You don't owe
sense.
them anything. You don't owe them anything. You do what you do to make sense
But
for
when
you.
you're trying to do something, you want to show other people, and then they just
So you have to, okay. So you have to use your seichel when to have a smartphone with you and when not.
I'll give you a very good example of this situation that may help you. I meet with many people who are both secular and non-Jewish. Jewish, secular, or non-Jewish. In context that religion is basically at the very bottom of the food chain, not important. And every time they organize activities that are perfectly aligned with Yom Kippur, let's have a barbecue on Yom Kippur, let's have a party on Sukkot, and every time they do that, and for many years it was going on, until one guy like yourself stood up and said, but it's Yom Kippur. And suddenly what we saw is that 3 more other people stood up, yeah, it is Yom Kippur. And after a few years of people saying that, they change. Now you can be quiet, or you can be very vocal, or you can be just at the right level, the right time, make the right decisions so that you can educate, not create barriers, and then people change. Slowly, mind you. Some people never change, some will do. At the university I went, Yom Kippur was a holiday. And that's in Toronto. No, it's not a Jewish university.
But it takes the vocal students in medical school. My son
Right. So it was close to Yom Kippur.
There were religious Jews who were vocal.